The subject for this evening is both clear and probably a bit abstruse, because we are going to be talking around, having a conversation around the idea of art history and how art histories are made, constructed, created, dismantled, and in the process how certain black holes emerge where evidently some segment of work, some period of history, some individuals get highlighted when you look back at a span of time, and some seem to fall off the map. Certain things seem to accrue importance as time goes on, and certain things don't seem to gather much moss. How that affects one's perception, one's notion of what art is and what art does in our times and in our society. In one sense, how it constructs a narrative of a nation, and why one should be bothered about it, why one should be concerned about it. The context is the fact that the artist of the moment, S.G. VASUDEV, was a product of the College of Art Madras, which, as most of you know, was the oldest arts college in India, starting in 1850. It's interesting that this history has, in a strange way, not been really mapped. It's not been really articulated. By fits and starts, various people have written about the products of the arts college. By fits and starts, people have written about a little bit about the history of the arts college. But really speaking, there is no authoritative, definitive historical version that we have. And it's always been a question. So for someone like me who lives in Chennai, Madras, and who's grown up there, it's always been a question that why is it so that we know so much more about probably Shantiniketan, so much more probably about JJ School, so much more probably about the Baroda MS University Arts Department, but somehow Madras seems to have lagged behind. One of the reasons often postulated is because of the absence of an art history program in the college itself, that while it has departments in painting and sculpture and so on, and applied art, but art history, art theory somehow gets left behind and becomes like a non-issue almost. So that is a liability for many of the products of the College of Art, because when they pass out, when they graduate, and when they have their exhibitions, you find that they don't have a fraternal accompanying textual narrative that happens. Many of the things that happen there sort of dropped off. Now, interestingly, the first Indian principal of the College of Art Madras was someone who came from Shantiniketan, Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary, very, very important dynamic artist, who was also a wrestler, who was also a shooter, a hunter. He was a very vigorous sculptor, he was a very vigorous painter, etc., etc. We don't have really any historical work that has looked at Devi Prasad Roy Chaudhary. There's no one book. Of course, a film is out of the question because those days videography was not as easy as it is today. Selfies were not taken. Now, it seems like a loss that such a personality does not find location in a day-to-day discourse on art history in India, on art practice in India. But we don't know the man. We don't know his personality. We don't know his eccentricities. We don't know those skills that he used to do what he used to do. And it's kind of hanging in a limbo. Now, completely by chance, a professor of the Madras Christian College of Economics, somebody called Joseph James, who liked Western poetry and therefore used to write a bit of a commentary on Western poetry in the then important newspaper in Madras called Indian Express. Today it's a shadow of what it was, but those days that was a very important paper and had some space given to the arts, unlike today. So he used to write best critiques of performances of Western music for Indian Express. Befriends KCS Panikkar, talks to him, since his interest is in Western art in some broad sense, he gets interested in this regional modernism that is emerging in Madras through the Madras Arts College and what KCS Panikkar and group are doing. Begins to write tentatively about it. He's just goaded by colleagues in Indian Express, hey, you know Western art, why don't you write about it? He could have written about anything that is within bracket Western, so it just needed a language. So he starts writing about it. And very soon becomes the expert of the Cholamandal group, writes projects called Madras Metaphor and so on. And I'm thinking, supposing this gentleman did not exist, supposing he remained an economist and was not interested in anything Western, music or art or whatever, what would have happened to the Cholamandal project without anybody representing it, without anybody writing about it, without anybody talking to the artists and figuring out what they are trying to say? Completely by chance, another lady is invited by Indian Express to write for them. Her name is Anjali Sarkar, who had a printing press, so they thought, well, having a printing press and dealing with other people's writings, maybe you can also write. So she is invited to write, and she starts writing. Completely chance, totally chancy. There's nothing planned here. It's not as if the city of Chennai is saying that, hey, we have an arts college, we are proud of it, wonderful students are coming out of it. Let's create a segment where art writers and art historians can also emerge. Will tell us what these young people are doing. No, nothing of the sort. They would say, let's create an archive where we have material, what Devi Prasad Roy Choudhury did, what E.B. Havel in 1994, when he was a principal. Very interesting connections. E.B. Havel, very, very charismatic Irish artist and art historian and teacher, who came first to the College of Art Madras, taught there for 2 years, moved to Calcutta, was there for 15 years, 16 years. Very charismatic, influenced Abanindranath Tagore. This whole idea of the Bengal school comes from there. This whole Bharat Mata thing, painting is coming from E.B. Havel's persuading Abanindranath Tagore that just as you need political nationalism, just as you need economic nationalism, you also need aesthetic nationalism. Don't forget your aesthetics. Don't get absorbed in what we from the British Islands are bringing. Obviously, Havel would say it was an Irishman. He was fighting the British also, just like the Indian national movement was fighting the British. Now, the Madras College of Art has no evidence that somebody called Havel walked in those corridors. The ghost of Havel is absent from the Madras College of Art. The ghost of Havel is absent from any discourse of art in Madras. So Havel, we don't know. Devi Prasad Roy Choudhury, we don't know. Paritosh Sen and what he did, neither do we know in Madras nor do we know in Calcutta. Darshan Patel, a great absence. But for the fact that I curated an exhibition way back in 1998, a retrospective with Darshan, would have been a forgotten figure at the moment. So this is a narrative that keeps coming up again. I'm sure Bangalore can also tell us a similar narrative, whether it is Venkatappa or any of the other great figures that came out of Hebbar, etc. But these are at least names that we know. But what about the in-between, the people who fell through the gap, the people who have vanished even though they were very much presences? So that's why we're calling this the presence of an absence. So interestingly, I'm going to invite them. Shivaji, Panikkar, please come up, and Ramachandran and Jony, please come up. And here we're going to focus a bit on the issue of art history itself and how art history remains locked in certain narrow spaces and is not able to open out for various reasons. And those reasons need to be also put up in the public space, and a conversation has to happen around it, and we need to figure out how to cross these humps as we see them appearing.
Yes, Sadanand has already made a sketch of concerns primarily related to Madras art movement and its lack of history, what he calls as poverty or absence of art history. I got turned on, so to say, by that formulation quite a bit, because I work around the idea of failure, and I'm interested in failures. So probably it is because Madras had somewhat failed already in the 50 years of history. One completed 50 years of independence, something like 1996. There wasn't too much of a talk about achievement of Madras art movement. Meanwhile, at the same time, Baroda had published a book, Contemporary Art in Baroda, around the same time, 50 years of Baroda, edited by Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh. And that had actually provoked me to think as to why Madras had not produced some historical account of that kind. And it was in 2000 and 2001 that I took 1 year sabbatical leave from MS University of Baroda and went and lived in Chennai, in Choromandel, and went around the city, visiting various institutions and also meeting various artists and interviewing. So I have a large body of documentation that I did, including photographs, slides, catalogs, some rare catalogs of 40s, including I managed to kind of dig up from some private collections at that time. But then once I went back to Baroda, there was only one demand, that was from Palaniappan at that time, who was the regional center in Lucknow, and asked me to make a presentation in Lucknow, of all places, on Madras art. Otherwise, there was hardly any other enthusiasm. There was one invitation from Bengaluru, that was again by S.T. VASUDEV. Other than that, there was no enthusiasm or application for my collection of material or information of my knowledge, except that I was somewhat teaching that, some bit of it in the classroom.
But a constant attempt to rewrite and to reconstruct and to begin from tabula rasa, from a clean slate, as if things did not happen and as if certain things don't exist. So it's an important thing to bracket and keep in mind. I invite Ramachandran to want to come here.
And after Shivaji's presentation, it is something different which I could feel. So there's a break in that way. Because the feedback which I got was something to do with the Madras movement, or what I try to think as Madras move. I cannot say that it's a Madras movement, because the movement is a thing which it should happen only over there, but it was a pan-Indian phenomenon, the modern art scene. So that is what I was thinking, how the Madras school could contribute quite a lot to the Indian national modernism, because the whole national identity question was there on those days. And with all our respect to Havel, Anandakumar Swami, Okabura Kakoso, a lot of people who have been talking about the Indian nationalism, nationalist art movement, and Abhinandan Tagore who would follow, would do something, create the Bengal school movement. And D.P. Roy Chaudhary, who was a rebel from that field, he came to Chennai as a principal. And whatever he had done, as Sadanand spoke, was not much discussion, much documentation about any of these things. Actually, in our documentation, our system of art history, we don't have any art story classes in majority of the art institutions as Sadanand told, except in Baroda and Sadhuri, the school has something. Very limited school in Karnataka, they have something. So it's very limited number of people are working in the field of art history. There are two types of absences. One is the mainstream doesn't want to keep, and the substreams or the downtrodden or that kind of people also don't want to keep that kind of thing. Here, the Indian art history, what happens from Havel's time onwards or whatever school of art, which they have very strategically planned for art schools. It was the India as a whole they have seen on those days itself. You can understand. So Chennai, Lahore, Calcutta, the positioning was very clear. They could feel that, and then the complete Orientalism took over. What India art should be, what Indian art should be, what Indian philosophy should be, whether it should be esoteric, whether it should be related to common people, or it should be mystery. So they have already taught us everything. They instigated us to think. They framed our thinking. They have already manipulated the whole mindset. Just like Edward says in Orientalism, what are the things which you have to learn, you have already learned. And now you cannot change your own mind. So whatever absences which you have created is out of that. You have to see only this.
The us identity was very strong and was asserted in all fields, including in the arts, leading to all kinds of problems, including what is called the reinvention of tradition and so on. So the Madras school, for example, the Madras movement is all about that in one sense, getting back to nativism, rejecting the West. Today, I think one has moved away from that to a completely different understanding of global perspective, where one doesn't need to look at someone as superior and someone as inferior. There is a more level playing field. It's very interesting. I'm just writing the foreword for a new book that's about to be published, written by an important art historian called John Guy. John Guy is the curator of the Indian and Asian section at the Metropolitan Museum in New York. For many years, he was with the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. He has, within quotation, discovered an Indian artist for us who lived and painted in Madras somewhere till the early 1950s, and then for various reasons of family, etc., moved to New York and settled there. Her name is Y.G. Srimati. Y.G. Srimati used to paint what could only be called the traditional style, which means you take off on the Bengal school, watercolor medium, and paint a Shiva, and paint Nataraja, and paint kind of echoes of Ajanta in a more Orientalist, the word that is the more Orientalist fashion, a woman in her toilet, a woman making her face, and so on. Now, this a set of 24 paintings were within quotation discovered in New York after Y.G. Srimati passed away about 5 years ago. And John Guy met her husband, an American artist himself. And this work has now come to the Metropolitan Museum, and they've curated a beautiful, absolutely beautiful exhibition of 24 works of Y.G. Srimati. And John Guy has researched into the milieu of Madras of that period, the 1940s, 30s, 40s. She was hardly 20, 21 when she was painting this. Of course, she continued to paint till she passed away, but she was also a musician, veena player, she was also a Bharatanatyam dancer. And all this put together, she used to conduct soirees in New York. Now, it's an individual and a set of artistic works which, like I said, went invisible even for us. Whether we would consider it even as art, like the question that Shivaji posed, all those posters and all those protest work, do we even want to call it art? Is a question that we need to keep asking ourselves. Were these works that were painted by Vaji Srimati, of gods and goddesses, of a gloriously bare-breasted Saraswati, for which we sent Hussain back to oblivion and banished him from the country. This 21-year-old girl has painted in 1949 or something this absolutely gloriously bare-breasted Saraswati, which is now in the Metropolitan Museum. Do we want to call that art? Or was it Orientalism? Or was it calendar art? Or what was it? But these are the questions that emerge. As time passes, we need to begin to look at many of these things from new perspective, which no longer create the binary of us and them, but I think open the field a little bit. So we'll get into that as we get into the discussion. But Jony?
I am an ardent reader of history, not just art history. I read general history, especially Indian political history, Indian social history. But when I read art history, I remember one particular phrase forwarded by G.N. Devi, Ganesh Devi, theoretician and a social linguist based in Baroda. When I went to study in Baroda in the early 90s, one of the seminars, I heard G.N. Devi. I didn't understand much, but I remembered, or still I remember, this particular phrase, selective amnesia. You like to put certain things into oblivion, but in a very selective fashion. You don't want to remember, but you still remember. You still don't want to remember. This constant chain of denial. Indian art history, Indian art historiography is based on selective amnesia. Now, going back to what Sadanand Menon said as a preamble to this discussion, he said some people become critics by chance. See, I did a post-graduation in English literature, and several students, many students were with me. When we study English literature, we all don't become poets or writers of Shakespeare's worth or Shelley's worth. If we study music in a music college, we all don't become musicians. We may be playing guitar, but we don't become guitarists. We may be practicing dance, but we are not qualified to call ourselves as dancers because we are not doing it full time. But by virtue of becoming art teachers, art history teachers in India today, except for a few, you know the names, except for a few, most of them call art historians only because they are teaching art history. In a primary school or in a college, if there is a mathematics teacher, a professor, we don't call him a mathematician. A chemistry teacher is not called a scientist. He or she is always called a professor or a lecturer. They are a teacher. So, we have some kind of a lopsidedness in writing history, in imagining history, in constructing the historical narrative, whether it is of our national history or our art history. I think I accuse art history more than the national history, the general history, because there are very big, good people like Romila Thapar, like Ramachandran Guha, so many of them. But we have created certain iconic figures. Yesterday, I was just looking at this, a bit of Google search for preparing for this particular session. Then I found there was a magazine, Vrichik, that was published from Baroda, 1969. It was edited by none other than Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh and was supported by late Bhupen Kakar. I believe that our Asia Art Archives has documented the whole thing, like they have archived it. Unfortunately, I couldn't get what exactly was the content throughout those years. But I assume that there was no debate on the South Indian art or this Madras movement, 1960s and the 1970s. So, there also I understand that there is this selective amnesia. You want to keep, you always have, we generally say that there is always two Indias, or any country, we two Britons, two Frances, two Indias. One India is India of the rich, of the powerful, and the visible. The other India is of the poor, and the invisible, and the weak ones. So, in Indian art history, there are two Indias. Because it is so interesting if you look at the discourse that very proudly that Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh creates, in which he says that we want to write Indian history. Actually, we didn't want to restrict ourselves into Baroda or Delhi or Bombay, but we wanted an India. In that India, South India generally and Madras school particularly is excluded, erased, submerged, obfuscated, whichever words that you can use. And now, in turn, as South Indians, we can't actually get away from of that crime or that guilt. When we imagine an India, we almost confine ourselves in the South Indian discourse, the South Indian narrative. What is dividing? What is this dividing line between these 5 South Indian states as of now, and before 4 South Indian states, and the rest of India? In which, of course, North India is cut. It is almost like a torso. Our art history is like a torso. We claim that we have heard, but we don't have an extreme northeastern history. We don't have a Kashmirian history. But when we talk about the national art history, it is that generic national history which is comprised of the Hindi-speaking, Punjabi, Jat-dominated history. And now coming to the Madras metaphor or the South Indian, the Madras movement, we call either as neo-tantric movement, and just to be tied to the general tantric yoga and the so-called the post-abstract expressionist discourse of which started in late 1940s, 50s and 60s. Which was taken further by the Clement Greenbergian ideology. But when that is always attached to the national history as a kind of a secondary, subordinate thing. Now, what about the South Indian history? Suppose we consider South Indian history as an elephant. We say, there is a saying, there is an elephant in this room. There is an elephant in this room, but we don't see it. There is an art history called, an elephant called the South Indian art history, or the art history of the South Indian art in this room. We don't see it. Why we don't see it? Because we are not looking. We are not looking for it. We are not looking for it. Another interesting thing. We have been talking, Sadanand Menon said that suppose if we had more art history departments in our colleges, we would have produced better historians here, and they would have actually done something very, very good for the South Indian history. But I say no. I say no. Why? Because let us take Shantiniketan, let us take Baroda, the departments. How many art historians these departments have produced? They haven't many. Why? Because the market, the so-called market, is absorbing all the potential art historians into their stream. And these art history departments are incapable of inculcating professional integrity and professional benchmarks with the minds of the young students. They are given this insecurity. They are always told that art history is not going to pay. In Indian art history, the presence of an absence. I think like it should have been like the absence of a presence, you know. So, yeah. So this is 1969, and this particular sculpture, public sculpture, which is about around 30 feet tall in the Palghat district, Panikkar district in Kerala, was done by Kanai Kunjiraman. Kunjiraman was a Madras school product, disciple of student of KCS Panikkar. 1965, he went to Slade School and studied under Red Butler. I will just put the history of this work in a nutshell. A new dam was being built in Malappuzha, Palakkad, and the public work department, the PWD department, wanted some kind of an artwork which should be put around the dam site. So Kanai Kunjiraman was given this particular assignment, and he did this work called the Yakshi. His idea was to make it 50 feet, and he could only manage because of lack of cement and a whole lot of things. This created such a controversy at that time, 1969, such a controversy, and many people even heckled him, made many efforts at the government level to stop it being completed. But somehow he finished it. There are historians, art historians and art observers in Kerala, art professors in Kerala who consider this as a public art presence, and which almost molded the idea of public sculpture in Kerala. We have another person called Nambudiri, VASUDEV Nambudiri, who was also a student of KCS Panikkar, who came there and started illustrating. And even before that, M.V. Devan, he was also a student, and A.S. Shivaraman, he was also a student. They all came from Madras school, and as there was no conducive and feasible atmosphere for living a full-time artist life, so to live as a full-time artist, they all took up their jobs as public magazine illustrators. In Kerala being a society full of readers and literate people, they all became illustrators, painters of some standing. And Kanai Kunjiraman became one of the sculptors who actually impacted the society with this monumental sculpture. And you can see that how provocative it is, and provocative is the word. But today, provocation is the last word when you talk about Yakshi. Because nobody thinks that it is provocative. Only thing is that I have recently also I saw that when family, like the father, mother, and the kids go there, they look at it as if it is it's an advertisement of a sanitary napkin or condom. When you generally see in your living room and see television, happen to see television together, you see a sort of embarrassment, but which could be managed. That is the maximum thing, but it is no longer a provocative thing. But maybe youngsters take a lot of selfies with this, but older people maybe not. So you can see that the kind of voluptuousness that he has portrayed there. Another view. This is Kanai Kunjiraman. By showing this work, my idea was to say that, like, if you today go to North India or any place beyond Coimbatore or Salem, and say that Kanai Kunjiraman, Kanai who? First of all, Kanai, Kunjiraman who? So we don't know. Where has this history gone? What has our art history done to us? Shivaji Panikkar refused to answer. He said there could be many answers. And with Kumar Nashan's two-line, I will complete this session. Sorry, this is my speech. Karutuvatiha cheyyavayya. Cheyyan varidhi labhichadil ninnida vicharam. Ayush thiradayumilla adhinindhyami narattu. I will translate. Karutuvatiha cheyyavayya. What I wish to do, I am not able to do. Cheyyan varidhi labhichadil ninnida vicharam. What I am allowed to do, where my mind is not sticking. Ayush thiradayumilla. I don't have the longevity of my life either. Adhinindhyami narattu. This humanness, this humanity is much condemnable. This art historical discourse is that. Thank you.
There's this notion that the proliferation of departments of art history could be the death of art history. The proposition that an academic approach to art history is in fact invitation to exclusion because it leads to specialization. And these are some of the assumptions or inferences from what Jony has said. The proposition that art historicity itself needs a completely different set of tools or a different set of preparation.
You see the issue of art history in relation to art practice and art history as an by itself, somewhat different implications. One thing is that since if I take Baroda as a modernist art institution and Madras School as a colonial period art institution, the difference is that at least from Tagore's time in Shantiniketan also, there was a need felt that artists should know art history. That's why Rabindranath Tagore actually managed to bring Stella Grandnish from West to lecture on modern Western art. I mean, that is way back in 1924, come to think of it. And some people who started Baroda Art School were enlightened to have art historical and theoretical inputs because it was a new beginning in 1949. Unlike Madras Art School, which was a kind of a colonial art school, and it had to be upgraded sometime in the mid-60s or something with the initiative of KCS Panikkar. Somehow or the other, I feel that there should have been a greater stress on art historical input in Madras art, specifically speaking. Generally, of course, there is an understanding because of Baroda probably that CKP or in any other art school, there is a component of art history. But somehow or the other, Madras Art School remained oblivious to this kind of development.
Let's say specialized fora, like the Indian Express newspaper, which wrote about the Cholamandal artists, which wrote about what was happening there, through people who were not necessarily academically qualified to write about art. They were writers and they came into it by chance. There was another important history teacher in Madras Christian College called Abraham Irali, another Malayali, who produced some fantastic annual magazines for the college for 4 consecutive years. Every time there was tremendous reference to the Cholamandal experiment. Artists were invited to contribute to the magazine. Students were invited to go and interview the artists, and those things are available in the library of the Madras Christian College. I, who was as a student there, got familiar with Cholamandal because of that. Amateur activity, completely amateur. It didn't lead to a book, it didn't lead to any academic discourse, it didn't lead to a history, as we say, but these are traces and fragments, and Indian art history has lived through these traces and fragments.
You acknowledge, and this is something that must be acknowledged, what the Indian Express did. Indian Express used to carry a Saturday page, which had reviews of modern art and so on, and they were the only people who supported the kind of art that the modern art that the Madras Art School was producing at the time. And I must acknowledge here the editor of that page, Rani Pura. She's one of them. She was half, then there was Ramachandran and so on. I was one of the writers, I was one of the reviewers. And you see, what is not acknowledged is the enormous animosity to the art that the art school is producing from papers like the Hindu. Hindu actually, the reviewers mocked it all the time. made fun of it. Hindu produced full-page articles. I was there were some person wrote full-page articles condemning not just Madras School of Art, but the whole modern art world over.
So I think what we come here for and what we realize also, me also being part of the same department, is that we need to write alternative art histories. We need to fill the gaps in, and we also need to figure out ways and means that we can publish a book. Obviously, Shivaji should write the book that he's been speaking about. Yes, we will try. And also, like our other friends also should write about these absences that we think that need to be acknowledged in the future, so that we no longer are another nation in our own nation.
Actually, we are so close to our contemporary times, like we are not able to see what we are actually producing in terms of art historical writing, which you qualify as alternative art history. Perhaps 20 years hence, maybe I am dead and gone, whatever I have written is going to fill in the gap. I am writing a blog, and which is read by thousands of people every day. I am happy to say that you can check the Google.
I am Naini Arora, and I think I belong to post-Chandramohan times of Baroda. So, a lot of things to hear and many things that I've seen and heard. Well, I don't know what I'm going to ask or say is a question or an observation or whatever it can be called, but the last 1.5 hours on the stage which have occurred, it first of all has 3 different terms, that is Indian art and history, which all can be debated from many different perspectives. And here we bring the 3 terms together. Another thing is that Indian art history would be something about Indian art. Now that itself is into a question, that what is Indian, because towards the end of the session we have boiled down to regional. We started with regional art, something which is very vital and is not being acknowledged. But this is regional still, and with the kind of political atmosphere in our country of the past as well as present, this kind of talk sort of brings a deep-seated fear out that if something as art we are able to, we are going to talk about these things in relation to art, then what can artists really do? I mean, I'm not sure if I'm clear with the question because I said I don't know.
Very clearly articulated. Thank you. Very good question.
Yeah, I think like this fear could be actually contained if we firmly believe what KGS had once said. Regional is the new international. So you have to have your regional identity, not linguistic identity per se, to resist the so-called imperial international contemporary.
Whether it is modern or postmodern, I don't know. But whether a person who's born a millennial, what kind of identity and what kind of region, because of migration, because of so many other different things, what kind of regionalism can I adhere to? With such multiple identities of having schooled somewhere else, coming from a different thought, having different ritual practices at home, and then identifying with different religions. I mean, how can one really say I belong to this particular region?
The word has changed. It's no longer regional, but it's local. So, in the new era, we talk about the local and the need for translocal connections. Not for global, but for translocal connections, where each local has its own dignity, its own space, its own identity, and its own richness. You don't need to be constantly imitating or copying. I mean, what Ramachandran is saying, this mimic society, which also was created in the art world, that you have to imitate, is also a product of the market, isn't it? That if I do that, I sell. Some gallery accepts me, and I'm sold in a particular manner, I'm hung in a particular manner, etc.
The whole notion of identity is something unified, I think goes back to the end of the 19th century. In the Bengal School of Art, that started, it's a reaction to colonial, we want to find an Indian identity kind of. But an identity today in the world we live in has to be fractured. How can it not be? I mean, there are so many things impinging on us. So many things. I work in commercial films. That doesn't stop me from responding to VASUDEV. And in fact, this is the occasion to mention the great thing that VASUDEV has done in our cultural system, which is to break out of the fine art thing, go and do covers, illustrations, work with Sadanand Kumar, work with Ved. The point is this fractured nature of our existence that has to be acknowledged and made part of our
Absolutely.